Welcome in, everyone, on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time for college football talk. Yes, the season's over, but the talk continues, and players are flying all over the country, aren't they? Whether it be early entries into the NFL draft, players saying we're going to stay put, we're going to take advantage of another year of school or another given year of a sixth year for some players of eligibility. Of course, we've got this transfer portal going nuts. We just wrapped up a Miami Live stream in which we talked about N'Kosi Perry announcing just a couple hours ago that he will stay at the University of Miami after he had announced his entry into the transfer portal just a couple days ago. So guys are jumping in, they're backing out. Grant Calcaterra, one of the up-and-coming tight ends in college football at Oklahoma, had announced he was jumping into the transfer portal and went to Auburn. Then he changed his mind, and I believe he's headed to SMU. That was announced a few days ago. Jeremy Pruitt out at Tennessee follows the SEC purge of coaches, which included Will Muschamp, Derek Mason, and Gus Malzahn this offseason. Listen to this. We just wrapped up the 2020 season, and there are only 5 coaches left in the SEC from the beginning of the 2019 season. So from the beginning of 2019 to the conclusion of 2020, only 5 of 14 coaches remain in the SEC. I believe the number 6. I was told 5, but I'm counting 6. Nick Saban, Ed Orgeron, Jimbo Fisher, Mark Stoops, Kirby Smart, Dan Mullen. 3 in the West, 3 in the East. So we got 6 out of 14, but still 8 of the 14 coaches in the SEC gone from the beginning of 2019. Barry Odom, gone. Jeremy Pruitt, gone. Derek Mason, gone. Will Muschamp, gone. And then, of course, Joe Moorhead and Matt Luke, gone. And Chad Morris, gone. All right, welcome in. We got 22 on the line pretty quickly here within the first 3 minutes. Ask me anything tonight. I looked around, searched around, wanted to come up with a title for the show. In recent days, we have served up topics like Alabama's dominance in 2020 and through the demolition of Ohio State in the national championship brings to mind, of course, how does the Tide compare to the last national champion in LSU? That's a good offensive comparison right there. I may have to cut a video on that comparing LSU and Alabama, the 2019 Tigers led by Joe Burrow and the Mac Jones, Devontae Smith-led Tide of 2020, or how does Alabama rate against the national championship teams of this century, going back to Oklahoma's win in 2000. Served that up a couple nights ago. A few people jumped on the line with those thoughts. Of course, we're always talking college football playoff formats, scheduling formats, and the like. 2020 16-team playoff. That's what it would look like. So I have gone back through the college football playoff era. I released a video last week. If you want to check out who would have made an 8-team playoff through the college football playoff era, check that out. Now we're going to go through 16 teams, whether that be according to the college football playoff rankings or based on the system of awarding a spot to all the conference champions. And I mean all the conference champions, going all the way through the Power 5 and the Group of 5. There we go. We're going to release that video soon of the 16-team playoff. These matchups are incredible. Who would have liked to have seen Oklahoma and North Carolina play this postseason, or Texas A&M and Iowa State? We saw Georgia and Cincinnati. What about Georgia and Coastal Carolina or Louisiana with a playoff spot in line? Or according to the college football playoff rankings this past season, we would have seen, Cincinnati, Georgia, but actually it's a playoff game. we would have seen Notre Dame and North Carolina in a 4-13 matchup as a rematch. Ohio State Northwestern in a rematch. Maybe the playoff committee or whatever committee we would put in charge of this would have broken down those matchups. Oklahoma, Indiana. Interesting. 2019. Man, we would have seen maybe a Oklahoma, Boise State matchup, Oregon, Memphis, Georgia, Minnesota, Baylor, Wisconsin. Good games all around. 16-team playoff. Probably not coming our way anytime soon, but it's fun to speculate. It's fun to speculate. In recent days, since the conclusion of 2020's national championship game, we've also talked about what seasons need to be looked at in the past in regards to national championships that were tainted. Talked about that as well. And again, we've got the news of the day or the news of the past week centering around Steve Sarkisian building a staff at Texas. There was a big debacle and snafu concerning LSU's attempted hire at defensive coordinator coming in from the New Orleans Saints. We're going to release that video tomorrow. Just finished up that record. Shane Beamer's putting together his staff at South Carolina. Early entries into the NFL draft. A big boost for the Ohio State Buckeyes, who are bringing back Chris Olave. Whatever's on your mind, let me know. Numbers 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. Boomer Kilpain, what you got? Who the big Oklahoma transfer we may get? I don't know. Ask the chat. Do we really have much idea who may join some of these teams before they do? I don't think so. Alabama football fan, roll tide. Good to see you. And reminding everyone, hit that like button. Bo Weevil, good to see you. David Knight, of course, on the line as well. What is it, David? Want to get this right. 2-liter bottle of Coke, bag of chips. That's referring to a little joke between David and myself. 2-liter bottle of Coke, bag of chips. You're all set. Slap the like button. Vinay, always breaking down tape for us. Ohio State offense is going to be loaded. Quarterback battle between CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, Kyle McCord. Will be interesting. Yes, that will be a topic of much debate and discussion, and us hopefully getting some real reports, some valid reports out of spring ball. Vinay believes CJ has the initial edge. Oh, that is going to be one heck of a quarterback battle. Sports Expert 101 is telling us that Liberty's Malik Willis might end up at Ohio State. Why in the world would Malik Willis go to Ohio State? Really? And further clutter up that quarterback room? Phil B. Philip Fulmer ate the McDonald's. That's why they had so many bags. Well, they couldn't put the McDonald's to waste. You don't leave that food go to waste. Somebody's going to eat that up. So it was crucial to the exchange and the transaction that was made, Phil, as to what McDonald's orders were made. I stay with the 1 and the 2. The 1 and the 2 are the only ones I ever order. You got the Big Mac deal, you got the Quarter Pounder deal, which reminds me, after this live stream, I pretty much have 3 options. I'm either going to go the quick route in the kitchen and just make the spaghetti, the quick spaghetti, heat up the noodles, the sauce, bam, it's done. Or I've got a recipe for tenderloins that's going to take some time. Or I just shoot down the street, get myself a number 1 or a number 2. With Philip Fulmer not in sight, I feel safe getting one of those 2 options. Vinay spoke to people at Buckeye Scoop. Those rumors are false. Apparently about Malik Willis, Liberty quarterback, coming to Columbus. I would think that that would not be the best of moves for him. SEC Dog, evening, Mark Rogers. Hit that like button one more time, y'all. This guy knows college football. Thank you so much, SEC Dog. Appreciate that. Georgia. We will be talking a lot of Georgia during the offseason, of course. The Dogs, at first glance, should recapture the SEC Eastern Division. They should. David Knight, Mark, how many portal transfers are successful in your estimation? That is a tremendous question. It's almost like the recruiting rankings. So we just finished up a show with Cam Underwood from State of the U on Miami. And if I could have any advanced metric introduced to college football that doesn't deal necessarily with on-the-field game action, I would love to see the recruiting rankings re-ranked 5 years later. So once we know that every player that was involved in those signings from those particular classes have moved on and are done with their collegiate careers, I would love to see the recruiting rankings reworked to see the before and the after. So the same thing here with the portal transfers. We would have to go through the portal transfers and then make an estimation on who was successful. Great question. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing?
Hey, Michael. I'm good. How are you?
Hey, a lot better now that Purdue is leaving Ohio State with the win. That was a great game. Ugly game, but it was a good game. By the way. Hey, I got a question. What do you know much about Brad Lamer, who was the defensive coordinator at Marshall? Now he's going to be the new DC at Purdue.
What do I know about him?
Yes.
I know nothing about him except for his name. As soon as you said his name, I know the name. I don't know anything about Michael. I can only keep track of so much. And the Marshall defensive coordinator would not be one of those names that I know his name. Again, I know who he is, but to evaluate his performance at Marshall, all I know about Marshall recently is they've had a significant upgrade in football. They had a bad finish to the season, losing their final 3 games, but they've been significantly better the last couple of years at Marshall.
I was wondering, now, did they do the 4-3 or is it like a 4-3-4? Or how do you have that's standard for football? But I know from the game you might have seen with Marshall, I didn't know what their base defense was like, if you really paid attention to it.
Well, Marshall played a bowl game. I saw every play of that game, but I wasn't taking note of their defensive lineup or their defensive scheme, I should say. That was the only game I saw Marshall play this year.
And I was saying, because when he was doing your Miami chat, I was literally getting fired up because I think, Ohio State's big, but I think they're going to regret to take a step back next year. Will they be 12-0? Yeah, they could, but I don't see. I see maybe 10-2. But I mean, like, why? I mean, I'll try to phrase
2 losses.
Nobody really killing.
Okay.
Do what?
2 losses to the Buckeyes.
Yeah. I see them potentially having 2 losses next year. Why do you see them running the table going 12-0 again? Or is it still too early to do your predictions?
Oh, well, it's way too early for me to give official predictions. That's not going to happen. I'm usually the last guy. I am the last guy that makes predictions. I am the last guy that makes predictions, which I'm going to tease a video that I'm going to produce because our friends over at SD1 Sports, they ran down the college football playoff predictions and the national championship predictions by guys like Kirk Herbstreit, Joel Klatt, Matt Leinart, Lee Corso, Desmond Howard over the past 5 years. And so I took the information that they gathered and I went through mine, and I am eager to make this video comparison of what my national championship and playoff predictions were at the beginning of the season compared to those gentlemen. It's pretty favorable.
I think he was like, what, 85% with the predictions? overall?
85% straight up. Yeah, I've done 85%. Unfortunately, not this season did I hit 85% of the games, but I've certainly hit close to 85% in the past. But in terms of
no, I'm talking about when you made your preseason predictions compared to how the team actually did.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was up there. That's what I was referring to.
Oh, so you caught the video where I was basically looking at the records of the teams this season versus what I predicted them to be. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought those turned out pretty well.
Yeah, it was good. And I was thinking you could have made a lot of money in Vegas, too, if I would have went with them before the season started, too. But I don't know. No, I just wanted to get your take about it. I didn't know if you knew much about Mayburn and stuff like that. And also, who do you possibly see? Because you talked about Jeff, what's his name? He coached the Titans and he coached the Rams. Jeff Fisher.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he'd ever done any college. I thought once he was done, he went straight coaching in the NFL. But I don't know. Do you think it would be good, considering there has been some pro coaches in the past that not really had success much success at the college level?
Every coach that we know of who has been successful at both levels, Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson, and the like, really cut their teeth on the college level. So people don't necessarily equate Pete Carroll to being a college coach before he was at USC, but he was a grad assistant, and then he was on Earl Bruce's coaching staff at Ohio State in the 1980s.
I thought he was straight NFL.
No, he was not.
He was in NFL first, then went to college and made the move back.
And as a head coach, correct. Then you've got, again, Jimmy Johnson had quite a few years at Oklahoma State before he went to Miami and then on to the NFL. But he cut his teeth at the college ranks, too. He was not an assistant in the NFL. He was in the college ranks, and he was a newcomer and a new-timer to the NFL when he took over the Cowboys. So it can be done.
Yeah, and it's like Barry Switzer. I mean, look, he had some somewhat success in the NFL, too, didn't he? I mean, he did win a Super Bowl with the Cowboys, though.
Good selection right there. So you got Barry Switzer, who never coached on a coaching staff in the NFL in any capacity, always a college coach. Then he goes to the NFL. Sure, he was given a talent-laden roster, but he still coached them to a Super Bowl win.
Yeah, and should have had two of them, but I guess. All right, well, hey, my dinner's about ready, Mark, so I better let you go. I'll catch you soon. I'll be catching you on the stream here.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thanks, bye.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to... The call will start at the beep.
Getting things rolling right here. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Mr. TW. How you doing, Mark Rogers?
Mr. TW, good to hear from you. I'm doing well. How are you?
Man, I'll tell you what, been super busy, but I'm glad I can catch a few minutes of your live show. And right now, everyone, click the like button, share the videos, subscribe, or you have a 98% chance of getting COVID. The only way you can inoculate yourself is liking and sharing the video.
And that's a secret that not a lot of people know, Mr. TW. So I'm glad that you're giving everybody the secret to long life here.
It's very scientific, so I can't reveal my sources, though.
What's on your mind tonight?
Well, a couple of things, and I'm going to get out of your way. One is, do you happen to know Urban Meyer's doctor's name? I desperately need to get a hold of him. He has been able to cure a life-threatening heart disease when he was in Florida, now a life-threatening brain tumor issue when he was at Ohio State. I just wondered if you have his name, because, man, I'm thinking this dude's a miracle worker.
I think it's a magical, mystical combination between his work and just Urban Meyer and his recovery. He just has what he's working on 9 lives. He's at about 4 right now. So he may want to preserve those the last 40 years of life.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of, and then next, about the Tennessee thing, I do believe the SEC football is for me as a Razorback fan, full disclosure, more entertaining when Tennessee is strong in the East. It is not just a given that, it's going to be Bama and Georgia or Bama and Florida in the SEC. When our program, Tennessee and Arkansas, are doing well, it seems like the profile or the interest in SEC football is great, because that means if they're in the top tier, there's a whole lot more passionate fan base involved. That's just me. Having said that, how dumb do they got to feel that they gave away sacks full of money for a 3-7 season?
Yeah, it's insane. The more that this gets uncovered, the more embarrassing it is for a football program that has been embarrassed on the field in terms of coaching hires, and then when you can't even cheat to win, that's pretty much the ultimate slam.
You know, I can't stand cheating. I can't stand it. If it's my team, I want to punish to the max. I can't stand it. But if you're going to cheat, for the love of God, win. Don't cheat and jeopardize your entire university for a 3-7 season. And then lastly, I'm going to ask a question. I'll jump off to let you answer it. And that is, what do you think is going to happen with Tennessee losing players? I'm sure there's going to be bowl bans in the next year or two. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I know you did a video on it with the Tennessee guy, but I mean, are you willing to kind of speculate what you think the bowl bans are going to be, and what do you think that the Tennessee players are going to do? You think a majority of them are going to stay and ride it out, or transfer out to where they can play for a postseason?
I believe that there are certain hot button evidences that typically are tied to serious issues, and one of them would be money. As soon as you say money was exchanged, then you're taking that to a pretty high level of when you look at some of the major scandals across college football over the past 50 years. SMU, of course, was at the highest level. There has always been money exchanged hands. Now, there have been some pretty tough, difficult scandals at various places that involved other things, incendiary type of activity to lure recruits to campus and get them signed, or change their grades, fix their grades so they can stay eligible, all those things. But once you exchange money in an amateur sport, at least it is for now on the surface, then that's what is our first indicator that this could be a serious issue and serious penalties. What that is, I don't know. The Penn State situation is a whole different deal that obviously goes beyond, cheating to win. That's a whole criminal case. So that got elevated, and rightfully so, to a whole different level. But when we're just talking about what football programs have been willing to do to cheat to win, exchanging money is about as bad as it gets. So if I'm going to speculate, I don't know. Let's say I would just be speculating without knowing the extent of all of this. If we knew the extent of all of it, and then we compare it to the precedents set elsewhere, then we can make a judgment. But just off the top of my head, I think they lose postseason play for a couple of years, and they lose scholarships for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Do you think that during this time they'll recover and become a 6-6 team in these years, or do you think you're going to see a lot of transfers?
I think that depends on who they get to coach the team. They must make a stronger hire than all the hires that they've made since Philip Fulmer, because they've made poor hires, and So where we have seen teams and programs be able to recover in the face of NCAA issues, those schools have hired very strong leaders. Like for him not necessarily being a great football coach, Matt Luke did well to keep it together there at Ole Miss and should be given a lot of credit for working through a horrendous situation following what Hugh Freeze left. Bill O'Brien at Penn State, considering, again, the Penn State situation goes way beyond the athletic competition to criminal activity. It was pretty astounding. Now the NCAA did back off because Penn State did a lot of right things in the aftermath of that. So the initial penalties were harsh and severe, and they should have been. So I thought, my goodness, what's going to happen to Penn State? They're going to be 2-10 for the next 5 years, because who in the world that's at anything above a 3-star will go to Penn State when they're getting offers all over the place, because it was such a stigma tied to Penn State football. And on top of that, reduced scholarships, postseason ban. Who's going to want to play there that's any good? Well, fortunately, they got a strong leader in, and they also had the NCAA show them some kindness and back off on the penalties, and they weathered the storm and went through an 8-4 and 7-5 season. Now Tennessee's not even going 8-4 and 7-5 with a full scholarship load and with no allegations or postseason ban. So, yeah.
Well, Mark, I appreciate your time, and I want to say before I jump off, thank you for all you do for us fans, those of us that are tremendously passionate about college football, even in the off season. I want to thank you for taking interest in each one of these programs by, having writers and podcasters and media people from these different schools. I am a passionate college football guy. I don't think there's a sport that even comes within a mile as in second place to college football. And I appreciate your studiousness, your passion, your intelligence, and your balance through all of this. I'm going to jump off here, and I think I said it the way you had written it. Your handwriting's a little scribbly, but I'm just kidding there. Anyway, enjoy the show. Take care, brother.
Excellent, Mr. DW. Appreciate that. Our man, Mr. TW, always supporting.
The call will start at the beep.
Even if I have to exchange the $10 with him, it's well worth it for the promotional value. So I give him the 10. He throws out the 10. We're good. He says a lot of kind words about me, and that's the exchange. It's very much like what they do at Tennessee. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Good evening, Mark. This is Kevin from Dallas, Georgia. How you doing?
Hey, Kevin. What's going on?
Well, just someone wanted to piggyback as far as the previous caller, as far as the old saying, what a difference a day makes, or I guess what a difference a couple of decades make, as far as Alabama was in the same situation in which University of Tennessee is in now. And the reason what assisted, unbeknownst as far as if you can use that word, the University of Alabama was two things. One was as far as the coach at the time, which I guess he must have had a contract that was written on a paper napkin as far as Mike Price and his son going to a strip club down in was at Panama City. And that was, quote, the university's just cause as far as not hiring him. And then as far as going a little bit as far as the future, finally finding, quote, the right man. And when they found the right man, he told them as far as on that private plane, hey, do you feel that I'm the best coach? And, the AD was shocked that he would ask him that question. Yeah, we feel you're the right coach. But he said, no, I'm not the right coach. I'm the best recruiter. And what he did, he put that 250-mile radius around Tuscaloosa, and he recruited. So, a lot of it has to do with finding the right man, Mr. Rogers. And whether Tennessee is going to be able to do that due diligence, find the right man, and give him 5, because you're going to have to give him 5 or 6 years. I wouldn't accept that job, Mark, unless you're going to give me 5 to 6 years. I can't do it in 4. And really, honestly, if I'm a Napier or the gentleman that coached Carolina, honestly, you have to give me 7 years. Because we don't know what's going to come down the pike as far as It said level 1, level 2. What is level 1, level 2? That means what? A 2-year bowl ban or a 3-year bowl ban, and say I'm going to lose what 4 to 5 scholarships a year for maybe the next 3 to 4 years, which we know that can cripple a program. So,
well, these guys all have contacts. Obviously, they've been all over the place at different schools. They've got coaching buddies. They've got they've got contacts all over the place. If I were a serious candidate for the Tennessee coaching job, I would be online and on the phone trying to track down anybody possible that could give me some type of estimation on what this will look like when it's all said and done. To say, hey, do a review of previous NCAA cases against football programs and what's happened, because I would want to know what I would want to have a solid idea of what I'm getting myself into.
Well, would it be safe to say we're not talking about a death penalty? We're not talking about SMU.
No.
I don't think the NCAA want to go down that road again.
That SMU situation went on forever, and it was just so ridiculously blatant for years and years and years and years. Plus, man, for the NCAA, for as much as they would tell you that they don't play favorites, for them to go after an SEC team like that, I just don't see that happening.
That would not happen. That would not happen.
When I arrived in Mississippi in 1994, so this was my second TV job. This was my first one in sports. Ole Miss was right in the middle of a huge scandal that I had to brush up and study on and get up to speed on very quickly. And they were in the middle of some huge violations. This was in 1994-95. And this is before, and they got themselves a strong leader. They picked up Tommy Tuberville, and he brought them through a very difficult bowl ban, scholarship reductions, and there was talk about a death penalty at Ole Miss at that point. Yep.
Then also, just wanted to do a square for a second, and as far as what the old thing about degrees of separation. And it's as far as that transition from the college game to the pro game. And sometimes that transition can be willingly, then sometimes it could be unwillingly. And when I thought about it, it made me just laugh when it comes to, we go to the Pac-12 for a moment. And that's when you had Harbaugh and Carroll. And I feel that Harbaugh finally caught up with Carroll. And that, kind of ushered him as far as the NFL. And then once Carroll got to the NFL, I think Carroll because he had the upper hand as far as the NFL. I know Harbaugh did his, he did a great job with the 49ers, and he was a lack of a call away from winning a Super Bowl. But I think that, finally, the posse caught up with him, and I think that it was a matter of Harbaugh, pushing Carroll to the NFL, and Carroll, in turn, pushing Harbaugh. And then when I look at the SEC for a moment, I think the same could be said maybe to a lesser degree when it comes to Meyer and Saban. Because I believe that Meyer had the upper hand for a moment, and once Saban was able to finally do what he did, I think that was in 2009, that's when, as the previous caller stated, all these physical ailments came about. Okay, I'm gonna leave, Florida, spend some time with my family. The next thing you know, he's on ESPN, and from ESPN, okay, I'm going to go to one of the only 2 jobs I would even consider taking. That's either Ohio State or Notre Dame.
You make an interesting point about Carroll and Harbaugh, and I think one of the things that worked for Jim Harbaugh is that, as you well know, if you're in a conference where you don't quite have the talent to compete with the best in the conference, one of the more effective ways to compete is to play a different style of football than everybody else. Just be a different team that's a difficult matchup. And the Pac-12 was playing good football back then. So the Pac-12, for anybody that's been watching football for less than 5 years that's watching right now, the Pac-12 hasn't always been the laughing stock of the Power Five. The Pac-12, from the time I started watching college football up until about 5 or 6 years ago, at any point in time, was relevant. And certainly you're talking about a time in the late 2000, you're talking from about 2008 to about 2010 10, 11, 12 when Stanford rose to power under Jim Harbaugh. And you're talking about a league that had as good a passers and pass catchers as any league in the country. And so what did Harbaugh do? He loaded up with fullbacks and tight ends and linebackers, and he played in a box. And he had line splits that were basically offensive linemen's shoelaces were rubbing against one another. And he just pounded people and played a completely different style of football. And I think that was part of his success there.
And one last question, Mark, that's in regards to when you grade all-time teams, is it right to go as far as back, say, to, 50 to 75 years, or would it be the correct route to go maybe 30 years when you say all-time great team?
Okay, so this is difficult because there's no 1 year that you can say it all changed this year. So I'll have people call all the time and they'll disregard national championships from 50 years ago and they'll just pick up some random year and say, we can only count national championships since 1980. And I'll say, well, what magically happened in 1980? Nothing. There's no difference in the way college football was played in 1979 versus in 1980 versus in 1981. So just to pick a year randomly, that's all it is it's just a round number. Everything evolved. All these things evolved. The style of play, the schemes, the approaches, segregation, going to that is the biggest factor in all this above anything else, was the integration of the black athlete into college football. But we can't say that all happened in 1965, so these are more relevant championships starting in 1965. Well, it happened all over the place at different times. Jim Brown was able to play at Syracuse in the mid-50s, but he would not have been able to play in the SEC even 10 years later. So it's difficult to just say, bam, pinpoint a year. If I was going to go through that process, and if I knew that a ton of people were going to watch these videos, I would dive into that, and I would love to do it. And the way I would approach it, and I've been inspired by what you just asked, is I would come up with some kind of metric to weigh national championships, conference championships, winning percentage, all that stuff. But then I would basically weight the national championships, especially during the era of desegregation. I would give them more weight each year to some degree, if you follow me. Like a national championship in 1980 would be worth more than one in 1970, that would be worth more in 1960. Just because of the recency, but more so because of the excellence of the black athlete, and unfortunately our stupidity as a society for a long time in not allowing them to play. And therefore we've arrived at a state, fortunately, where sometime in the mid-70s, where it became open to everyone. But it took forever. So yes, a national championship in 1990 to me is more valid than one in 1950 because of that more than anything. But also, we can relate, depending on your age, you could relate to, so I think you're in your 50s, I believe, based on another conversation. So you can, so it's funny to talk to different sports fans because their frame of reference changes based on how old they are. So you get a 21-year-old kid on here and they think if it happened in 2000, the year 2000, that's ancient history. But if you're in your 50s, then you think, well, 2000, man, I was in my prime. So there's that recency bias versus some people that favor those things that are more historic. So it's a fascinating question, but I don't think that there's an answer to it because things did not change all of a sudden in 1 year. That's like when I see NFL stats, and I know I've asked you in the past whether you like the NFL, but you see it all the time where they'll cut off the NFL during the Super Bowl era. And they'll say, they'll only really count what happened starting in 1967 when they started playing a Super Bowl, or the merger, which was 4 years later. Well, you know, Bart Starr's career didn't start in his like 10th season. You know, it didn't just automatically start the year there was a merger. He was playing football against the same teams the year before. And they suddenly just start counting things when there was a Super Bowl. Well, they just added a game is all they did. It wasn't like anything magical happened. I know that there are other things involved, and I know the history of it, but it's a fascinating topic. All those things fascinate me. I could run a college football history channel.
And as always, you would knock it out the park, Mark. You know, just that one little, and it's a funny, sad thing. You know, going back to Tennessee, and after this, I'm gonna allow your other callers to get in, and that is, if I was anywhere between 0 to 18 years old, I can't recall the last time that Tennessee beat Alabama. You know, so, and that's wild. I would have never thought that I would live to see the day in which, you know, almost a generation can say that they can't remember as far as Tennessee beating Alabama. So I mean, that being the case, if anything else is gonna, you know, get them on the get them on the good foot, it should be, hey, we haven't beaten Alabama. I'll rob them. So.
Kevin, when I was covering the SEC firsthand, which was 1994 to 2000, I never saw Alabama beat Tennessee.
True.
So it's funny how those things happen. But this one doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon, especially with the recent news over the last couple of days.
Ouch, ouch, ouch. Well, as always, greatly appreciate your entertainment, Mark. And you take care, and please continue doing what you're doing, man.
Hey, thanks so much for the call. We always appreciate it. Have a great night.
All right, you do likewise, man.
All right, good stuff from Mr. TW. You guys get me started on college football history, and then I related to the NFL and baseball, and you know, I could sit here for 5 hours talking about that. Michael, God bless you. But when you ask me about Marshall's defense this year, I'm sorry. I watch a lot of college football, but I can't give you any take on Marshall's defensive alignment and defensive scheme this year. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
You know, I was not necessarily always the biggest ESPN fan, but their 30 for 30s, the one on the Pony Express,
oh yes,
the SMU teams of the 80s, is one of the best ones they've ever done, by the way.
I love it. I've watched it probably 4 times. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, talk about, I posted this in the chat, talk about the best team money could buy.
Yeah.
You remember that old deal, Mark?
Oh, it was so blatant. It was just so blatant and just such buffoonery that they were that naive and stupid to be that just open about it in some respects. It was just crazy.
You know, I think Dickerson got a Trans Am, didn't he?
Yeah, I think that was his deal, a Trans Am. And he's more forthright about it. Craig James, I don't think, has ever come clean about what he received. And I don't necessarily remember what he said during that documentary, but I've heard him asked at other times. And of course, Craig James had a fine NFL career with the Patriots, as you well know, and then moved on to become a primary broadcaster at ESPN for a long, long time. And I've heard him asked about it, and he kind of has always sidestepped it. But Dickerson he's talked openly about it.
Hey, I wanted to mention something, Mark. The other thing about that, by the way, I do have to say, if you ever want to do one of your national championship years, some would say 82 was a little bit controversial, but SMU might have had a case over Penn State for the national championship in 82.
Yes, you are right. Penn State, 11-1, of course, beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl with Todd Blackledge at quarterback. But their loss, now how is this for a non-conference game? Penn State's loss was in Birmingham against Alabama by 3 touchdowns.
Right. Yep. Well, Paterno never beat the Bear. I believe he went 0-4 against Bryant, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Right. lost that tough one in '78 on the goal line stand in the Superdome.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Matsui. Yes, it took me a minute there. Matsui was the fullback who later, of course, paved the way for Walter Payton, and they became best buddies.
Yeah. Matt Millen, I think, was also on that team.
Matt Millen was on that team. Absolutely, he was.
Yeah.
And Chuck Fusina was the quarterback.
Right, yeah. The Bama players told Penn State, you should have passed. You should have passed. Yeah, I'll say this, by the way. I wanted to throw out a couple of things. First of all, I do have to say some encouraging news about the Buckeyes. I've seen been posted in the chat. A lot more players returning than I thought would be happening. By the way, the Buckeye show tomorrow?
The Buckeye show actually is going to have to be moved to Thursday, but we will be going at it on Thursday. I believe they've got. I'm going to have to double check on that because Michael was telling us that the Buckeyes played basketball against Purdue tonight. And
yeah, I thought they did have a basketball game.
Okay,
yeah.
Because my Ohio State guys said that they had maybe they meant they probably meant player interviews and news conferences because they said Wednesday wasn't good, that we would have to move that to Thursday.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I don't know if you've heard, Mark, that they're getting Chris Olave back. And, Fair Mumford on the offensive line is a big move. They should have 3 starters back on the offensive line, and to get their 2 best receivers back is pretty big. I mean, they had one of the best groups of young receivers coming in, and I know I mentioned to you when we spoke before, they never were really able to kind of develop a 3rd or 4th receiver. I think the lack of games kind of hurt that lack of developing a 3rd or 4th wide receiver. Having a full season, knock on wood next year, I think it's going to be interesting to see what some of those young guys can do. I mean, obviously, they're going to have to start a new quarterback, which is going to be big. The word is it might be CJ. It's probably going to be CJ Stroud, although they're saying that Miller might get the competition. The tough thing with that, I must say, Mark, is it's unfortunate that there weren't more games and they didn't have, to their own, lack of play, maybe more blowouts this year so that they could have played, obviously the younger quarterback in some of those blowouts and, gotten him some reps.
Yeah, if there's a televised spring game like there typically has been in the past, but of course we live in a different situation now, I'm going to be more interested in watching that spring game than I have in forever to watch those 3 quarterbacks play.
Well, you see, 2 years ago, the Burrow-Haskins competition, I think it was still, they were kind of resided to the fact that when Haskins came in and beat the team up north in 17 in that comeback victory, that it was pretty much Haskins' job going into 18, but at the same time, Burrow was, played, actually, I think if you go back and watch that spring game in 18, he played pretty well and looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But, I think it was already kind of etched in stone, and Burrow had an injury, and he talked about that probably put him behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Yeah, I, like you and other Buckeye fans, jumped out of my seat when Haskins made that throw to Austin Mack on 3rd and 14 against Michigan. Just drilled that throw. That was the first time he really had to deliver and cut one loose, and it was a great throw. And catch.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you talk about one other opportunity that Harbaugh beat him, because I think I've said it before. If Barrett stays in that game, I don't know if they pull that game out. Because remember, they were losing 20-14 once Barrett left that game. I don't know if they win that game if Barrett continues as the quarterback.
I know. I don't know if Ohio State wins that game if anybody other than John O'Korn is quarterbacking for Michigan.
True. Yeah, well, if you think about it, it was lousy quarterback play that cost them in 16 and 17 because Spate threw the 2 bad picks in 16, and that was Ohio State's only 2 offensive touchdowns when they won that, the spot game in 16. So, that was. If they had just gotten competent quarterback play, you're probably right. They probably could have won both of those games.
For sure. But that position's pretty important.
No doubt. Hey, Mark, I wanted to ask you a couple quick things. By the way, any news on that Tennessee coaching search, or are they still? Have you heard any names?
They've got to hire an athletic director first. I think they stated that would be their primary concern, to go that route first, and then that athletic director would have to have a big hand into whom they hire.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, well, Fulmer's gone, so yeah, that's going to be interesting. You know what was interesting there? Were you surprised that I don't know what your comments ever were on that whole Schiano situation?
Oh wow. I'm
Remember
trying to.
that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember it. That's one of those situations where half of me wants to say, you know what? You found your guy. You believe in him. You believe that he's done nothing wrong. Stick with it. Stick to your guns. Go through with it. But there is an element to salesmanship and PR and getting a guy that's not only credible on the field, but that the fan base and the university and everybody involved is going to back and support out of the gate, especially when you're a losing organization at the time. So I was really split on that. I got to say, I hate to be split on a situation, but I was a bit wishy-washy on that, because Mark Rogers, wants to say, Greg Schiano was your selection. He's the best football coach that you can get. Hire him, unless he's done anything egregiously wrong. And of course, none of us know exactly what was done, but that wasn't my take on the situation. That
wasn't that like guilt by association, though, Mark? I mean, was it ever really proven that he was dirty and that he had done all these bad things? Wasn't it just like?
Yes, guilt by association. But in this day and age of, you're roasted by, the court of public opinion, and that in the mob mentality in this country now is just become something that's so impactful and influential on decision makers that supersedes anything else.
Yeah, if you're caught looking at somebody or shaking somebody's hand, your life can end up in the sewer. It's almost a joke. Well, it is a joke.
Yeah, it's horrible.
In a lot of ways,
it's horrible what happens to people's reputations based on if enough people can make enough noise on social media.
Yeah, one of the great lines ever. Where do I go to get my reputation back? You know, once it's destroyed. Hey, I was going to say, by the way, you were mentioning the Penn State situation. You know what I always wondered, and I think O'Brien kind of deserves credit for, kind of riding the ship a little bit, and then, being at least decent, in the couple of years that he was there, because I really thought they were just going to be, like 2-10, 3-9 kind of awful. And, well, I mean, he had Hackenberg, and they still had some talent, but, I mean, it was not necessarily a roster that you thought would go, I mean, would they go 8-4 those couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, Mark?
8-4, 7-5 were his 2 seasons.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing about it, I always wondered, do you think he would have done as good a job or a better job than Franklin? Now, obviously, his situation in Houston didn't necessarily work out, but, that's the NFL, and I think he got in over his head with player personnel decisions. But do you think if he'd have stuck it out there, how do you think that might have turned out for him? I always wondered that.
It's fascinating because he is, in some aspects, the other end of the spectrum to James Franklin. He won, I believe he won because he's a brilliant football coach. James Franklin's a recruiter, motivator, guy that the student athletes like. They obviously played for Bill O'Brien, so I shouldn't understate his ability to inspire them because they played over their heads. I thought he did a tremendous job. At any time James Franklin is given a ton of credit for what he's done at Penn State. He did raise it to another level, but Bill O'Brien never had that opportunity or chose not to take on the challenge or continue the challenge. But he left James Franklin in great shape. And like you, I just was reasoning, and if things change so quickly, and sometimes it's a good thing. In this matter, I think it's a good thing because the people at Penn State deserve better, and they didn't deserve to be shamed. The student body, the alumni, anybody else didn't deserve to be attached to that stigma. But there was a real stigma there for a year and a half, whatever it was. There was a real stigma. And like you, I was thinking, who in the world are they going to sign to play football there? Because if you're above a 3-star, why would you choose to go to Penn State? Even if you love the school and they had an academic program that fit your interests, why would you go there? If you're a really good football player, why would you go there? You can't go to a bowl game. You can't compete for a championship. You're going to play for a team that's going to be compromised based on scholarship reductions. Plus, you got this stigma of, oh, you go to Penn State. You're a player at Penn State. Because that was in the forefront of everybody's minds at the time. I just thought, who in the world are they going to sign? And I was thinking the same thing. They're going to be 2-10 for the next 5 years.
You maybe have mentioned it in the past. Was your overall view, though, that the NCAA, in many ways, over that situation, overreached? And I think they tried, you mentioned earlier in the conversation we're having with one gentleman, that they tried to kind of correct the wrong later on. But it was something that was like outside the purview, because certainly what happened there wasn't necessarily driving them to be a successful football team like an SMU, where they're spending money on players so that they can get the best athletes to give them a quote unquote competitive advantage. So I always thought they overreached at that point. I think the NCAA later on figured it out and tried to kind of right the wrong.
Absolutely. So there's a huge difference between cheating to compete and win and excel on the field, which we've seen time and time again, versus a criminal act. That's punishable by law. It's a despicable criminal act that all the people in play, of course, Sandusky being number one, should be and were held accountable. And then by extension, I would think you go after the university, and smarter people than me can figure out how, but to punish the football program and the people competing in the football program currently, when they were completely detached and not associated with any of that, it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. I agree with you. I think it was a complete overreach. Hey, last thing, Mark, you mentioned, I mentioned to you before about Steve Wilfong, the cover recruiting. I have one other suggestion, or actually a couple other suggestions for future guests.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever had them on, but have you had on the college football nerds in the past?
I've had them on. Either you or somebody else said something about them the other day, and I had the one guy, I believe his name's Josh. I had him on twice, of which the first time I reached out to him, I was happy to know that they watch and subscribe to me. But I had them on twice, and I watched their I watched a number of their videos. I state this from time to time. I just don't take a whole lot of time to watch people just because I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do here.
Sure.
But I did go back and I picked through their post-game analysis of Ohio State, Alabama, their pregame, and their wrap-up of maybe Ohio State, Clemson, whatever videos they did concerning the playoffs and the national championship games. And then I hit them up on Twitter because we follow each other and asked them to come back on, but I've not heard back. But they have been on twice.
Yeah, I thought that I caught one of your segments and you had them on once. I was just going to say, they're very good, and because I mentioned about having somebody on that kind of breaks down film and does analysis before, and they're very good at it. I have one other suggestion on that front. I believe are you familiar with Pro Football Focus?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Chris Collinsworth's crew.
Absolutely.
Well, I would say I like college. College and the NFL run neck and neck for me, although I probably do slightly like college more than the NFL, but it's very close. The one thing about the NFL is it's more competitive week to week, and, it's a higher level of play. So to me, it's a little bit more interesting that way. But in any case, Pro Football Focus, I think, also does a college football analysis and breakdown of the college game as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I'll go after them. I cannot read fast enough, David, when I'm watching these NFL games and they put up the Pro Football Focus ranking of each player. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
I'm just scanning those things, trying to take it in terms of, they think he's 40th out of 123 left tackles. Interesting. Or whatever the number is. Sure.
Well, they do a great job, Mark, grading out like offensive and defensive line play. So they, as far as that's concerned, like that's one of the things that they do a really good job of, as far as how are they getting pressures, how are they doing on pass protection, run blocking, things of that nature. So if you're ever looking for X's and O's stuff, they do some good work on that front.
Oh, always am. I would love to get those guys on because I would have tons of questions and would love to hear how they make certain determinations.
All right. Well, as always, a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Have a great night.
Take care, Mark.
You too. All right, college football nerds. I also jotted down Jerry DiNardo because his name came to mind, and I've had him on 3 times in the past, but it's been quite a long time to get him on to assess Big Ten football following 2020. Appreciate everybody in the live chat. David Knight, of course. Nate Beast rooting for Notre Dame. Chris Kennedy, great to see you as well. Chris, I don't know how long you've been watching the show, but I just recently noticed your handle coming up. So, of course, here it comes. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Chris, would love to know who you root for, how long you've been watching as well. The Rod Farba is in the house. Is Tennessee really a historical program? Yes. What have they really done before the Manning years and since '98? The Rod Farva, Tennessee is the second most successful program in the history of the SEC. Now, I got to watch that comment because each year and each season that gets chronicled in the history books, obviously their rankings drop as Florida, Georgia, LSU, others ascend. I believe I'm still accurate, though, in saying that Tennessee
The call will start at the beep.
is second all-time in SEC wins, winning percentage, and conference championships. So they are arguably the second best program in the history of the conference. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark, this is David Knight. How are you, sir?
There he is. I'm good. How are you?
Man, I'm hanging in there, brother. I wanted to ask you some questions about football, but I'm going to skip it. And I'd like to say to the live chat and anybody else is that I think the real problem I see, or something that's chapping my thumb, is that you are going out and doing all this for free, and people send you like $1.99 super chat. I'm like, you know what? Because I believe at some point in time, a long time ago, you told me that YouTube skims 30% off that, right?
Yes, 35, I believe, is the exact
35,
figure.
so it's even higher. And like people act like they just can't give up anything. And it's been a hot minute since I've donated, and I will take care of that. I should be in Dubai in the early part of February, and I will not be donating $1.99 or $100. It'll be in the thousands. Now, look, because I do that, I'm nobody special. I know I'm nobody in this lifetime, but I believe in helping. And, you know, you and I have had those talks about helping people. I will do everything I can help to bolster the show. But what I don't get is why people that repeatedly come in here and don't support you, yet they want to be a benefactor of everything that you do. Man, I just don't get it. And I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from the side chat or try to create any ruffles in the water. When somebody's providing you a source or an outlet for you to enjoy, yet you can't come out of your pocket to support them. Like I said when I sent you that message, $3 for a bag of chips, 99 cents for a 2-liter bottle of Coke. Come on, you guys give up $4 or $5, man. It's not going to kill you. And so, like, man, I'm just venting. Mark, I love your show, and I told you many times, like, you brought me out of some dark areas when I really had nothing to look forward to. And I'm guessing that everybody else has this show that you provide for free to look forward to. I don't understand why people can't come out of their pockets just a little bit to support you because you gave up a job that was very lucrative for you, and then here you are, and nobody's like, you know, even like when I brought up who wants to buy a T-shirt. Like I wasn't going to charge anybody anything for it. I was just going to get them made and send them to them. So it was advertising, so other people might look at it. And man, I'm sorry, I'm on a little bit of a rant, but man, I don't get it. Like somebody that does a lot of things for you for free, but you can't come out of your pocket for it. I'm done.
Well, I appreciate that, David. You know that. It's uncomfortable for me to get on here and ask for money and talk about money. I would like the content to do the work for me and for people to respond. I also understand that a ton of people are not in the position to give anything. So I want people to know that that all I expect of anybody is to come in here and listen and engage in the conversation. And if they like what we're doing, then to hit the like button, which that's a contribution certainly, because YouTube has made it important to hit the like button. It's not important because I feel better because I got 500 likes instead of 427. That doesn't really matter to me, but YouTube has made hitting the like button important because they get the videos out into traffic more if there's a better response. I don't know how all that works, but that's what it comes down to. But certainly, yes, I am in this because I love college football. I'm also in this because I believe I have value and I can do it well. And also because of all of you have supported me. So I felt as though taking a calculated risk was just that. It was a huge risk, but it was still calculated. I felt as though I could drum up enough revenue streams through this and through a number of other things tied to this. For example, these Nebraska people came to me. This was about 2 months ago and said, we want you to do a Nebraska show that's similar to the one you do with Ohio State, Florida State, Miami. We want you to do a Nebraska show. Well, I explained my situation and I said, I'm no longer going to be adding more shows just for free. I need to have a sponsor to do additional shows. And these people went out within 3 or 4 days and got me a sponsor for the Nebraska show for 10 weeks. And we did it for 10 weeks. And, you know, I didn't have a truckload of money dumped on my head, but I determined what it was worth. And I probably, David, undervalued myself by a ton because when I gave them a figure, they shot back an email within 2 minutes and said, done, checks coming in the mail. So I thought, man, I must have really undersold myself. So it's just going to take, individual contributions, which I certainly appreciate. And it's going to take things like me building out the Patreon, which I could do much better there. I have a lot of ideas I need to execute to draw people into Patreon. And it's going to take those affiliate links that we have. It's going to take, again, I would love to have sponsorships because that would take care of a lot of the bulk. But and I certainly want to acknowledge the people that are giving on the super chat, because I think it's phenomenal that 2 people just gave on the super chat that I don't even recognize their handles. So I want to appreciate them, and I will get to that in a second. So
yeah, I've never seen Ethan Heron. It's first time.
So as an entrepreneur of sorts, which I shouldn't even say of sorts, that's what I am at this point. I've quit a job. I've resigned from a large company, and this is what I'm doing. Therefore, basically, to survive and be successful, I just don't want to survive and barely pay the bills and live in a shack. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of wanting to succeed and do well, because other people do that in life. That to do so as an entrepreneur, you've got to create, I'm probably not going to make it doing this by just getting sponsorships or just doing one thing or just selling merchandise. I'm going to have to put about 14 things together at once, and they're all going to contribute to helping this channel succeed. And one other way that I've done that is I've started 12 other channels with a guy from SC1 Sports. So we've converted other channels, and we've made them, now they're not making money, but a couple of them are, but we need all 12 of them to make money, and we'll get there.
Yes, the other thing, I contacted Fanatics, right? That's a major league company, right?
Yep.
Of sports gear, and contacted several T-shirt companies, and they're willing, but here's the problem, is that if I can't buy any merchandise from them, then what, how do I inspire them or motivate them to sponsor you? And that's why I say that in the super chat. It's like, who would get a T-shirt or a hoodie or whatever, because it really comes down to, that basic law of economics, right? There are no free lunches in this world. So they want something if they're going to provide something. And I'm trying to do that, and I'm trying to get people to understand, look, we can wear these T-shirts, we can wear these hoodies, or have your logo on it, and there's no money from me to be made. I'm just like that middle guy, right? I'll even send the receipts to show you, hey, this is how much this costs, this was the packaging fee, blah, 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 blah. And but I just it's discouraging to see that people don't want to do that. And what you just said, I understand everybody doesn't have it like that. I totally got that. And 4 of us that do, we should be able to pick up the slack for those that do not.
And for those people that have some extra and see some value here, as we've talked about in the past, it would be amazing if enough of those people realized that they don't need to give anything that's going to be missed. If you look at my videos, my typical videos, they're getting 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, whatever number of views. They probably average about 3,000 or 4,000.
I've been looking at that, Mark.
That if those people realized that if they gave like $1 a month, and we had enough of those people, they all did it, then who's going to miss $1 a month? And if we had 5,000 people give $1 a month, then there you go. But I appreciate. I don't want to drive away our college football audience, but I appreciate your interest, and I appreciate way beyond your interest, your support, your loyalty, your thoughtfulness in trying to give me ideas and give me a push to make this all happen.
Yeah, and I know I'm also, Mark, I'm not trying to drive a wedge between you and your audience. That's not it at all. I just feel like there has to be some form of contribution, because this is you trying to make it. And I think you bring a lot to a lot of people's lives that, they may just feel free to overlook, but, ain't nothing for free in this world. And that's just a fact.
There's another part in this, and I'll finish up with this, that I've been emphasizing the last few weeks, that if people would share the videos, on social media, that would be a tremendous help as well. Because again, the more that these videos are watched, if that average of 3,000 or 4,000 becomes 15 or 20,000, then YouTube pays me more money, and then I'm able to impress sponsors by saying, instead of 3,000 people are watching these videos, 25,000 people are watching these videos. All those things add up. So, and I would expect that if people enjoy what we're doing here, then for them to put a link on Twitter or Facebook, it would just, they're basically sharing with their friends what they already enjoy. So their friends who like college football, I would think, would enjoy this as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to say is that I'd like to see analytics. I'd like to see, like in the side chat, people really making composed thoughts and structural analysis. I'm not into bashing anybody's team or talking bad about them. I don't see the point in that. I don't see the point in going off on people. That doesn't make sense. I'm a Notre Dame fan first. I graduated from Purdue. I like Ohio State. And after that, whatever. Have a lot of friends that are Ohio State fans. So somewhere along the way, I became a Subway Ohio State fan as well. But, man, I would always encourage people, like in the side chat, man, just bring those constructive thoughts, not the negativity.
And for people, and for those people that are interested in analytics, I'm going to be beating all you guys over the head with analytics over the next couple months. I'm going to compare everything you can imagine. One little pet project I've got right in front of me, I got stacks and stacks of notes and so forth, would be going through all the Power 5 conferences and comparing performance against the other Power 5 conferences, and all sorts of things like that I'm working on.
So, man, I know myself as a person. I hope everybody else is just really psyched. I think with the COVID-19 and all these bad things that this virus has brought, that people look at your show as this is an avenue or a release from being cooped up in your home, being stuck doing nothing, et cetera, because this is a definite outlet. And I just feel like, for myself, I'm so grateful to you, Mark. And after that, I'll shut up and stop.
Well, David, you always bring a ton of value here, and I appreciate the loyalty and the support. That. And I will certainly get back to some of your recent communications that I've read, but didn't have a chance to get back to. But thank you so much for all that you do. And certainly I don't want you to take it to heart, some of these things. I believe that you take this a little bit too hard. So we're good. Everything's going to be great.
So.
And we're gonna power through and succeed.
Definitely. So take care of yourself, man. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Our man, David Knight, laying it down there. Stretch and Pick. Thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Stretch and Pick, I have no idea who you root for, how long you've been watching. So welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Would always love to know. I'm always curious as to how long people have been watching. And then we also got a contribution down here from our guy Ethan Heron, maybe related to Boom, Ohio State senior, but definitely can do a few. Ethan, thank you so much for the contribution. Much, much, much appreciated. I will let everyone know before we get back to the college football conversation that we do have a Patreon page. It's about 16 cents per day, $5 per month. And I'm always honest with everybody right here, always honest about what we provide and what we don't. So when you go to my Patreon page, what you're going to see is that during the course of the college football season, we had watch parties per request. We had exclusive live streams per request. You've got my predictions exclusively there. What you're going to get right this second, not a whole lot right this second. So I will always be honest with you, but I'm going to be working on that in terms of what we provide on Patreon, because that's got to be ramped up as well. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Anthony.
Who is this?
Anthony.
Anthony. How are you?
Not too bad, Mark. How about yourself tonight?
I'm good. I'm good.
Just want to start by saying, love what you do, man. As always, love your content. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Hopefully your channel blows up. Like I said, I think you do great work. I still think they think about my idea about you focusing exclusively on Ohio State.
Oh, well.
Being a Buckeye fan, but these local guys, they leave a lot to be wanted, I tell you. But I know it's tough to just do one team, though, especially when you do them all. But like I said, just keep up the great work. I said it, and I agree with the last caller. You definitely make these long. My county's really hit hard by COVID, so we're kind of under a curfew and stuff. So it makes these long nights. You do a lot for us to get our minds off this craziness of 2020 and 2021. So definitely thank you for that. But I just want to get your take, Mark, on people and like Buckeye Nation are like. I know you're putting a lot into it, but I would say I love the work you do with on that 10-minute war with Steve Davis. I really enjoy that segment a lot. I watch that now, but the kind of Sark effect. Steve Sarkisian, when he's gonna, you think he's going to be able to build a wall around Texas? As you know, it's better than I that Ohio State's been raiding Texas, for the last 4 or 5 years and got some quality recruits, J.K. Dobbins, J.T. Barrett, Jeffrey Okuda, all guys that, either played in the league or playing in the league, a winning quarterback. Now, obviously, the big worry is, Sarkisian, basically being able to bring, Quentin Ewers back into, by all accounts. I mean, a kid, I don't know how much you watch college, but I watch a lot of college tape, and Quentin Ewers is like, a generational talent. I think even more so better than Caleb Williams' kid this year. I think he's going to be like a Trevor Lawrence or maybe even something better to just from A to Z is for everything you want in a quarterback. So do you think that Sarkisian can do what Matt Brown did in the the 90s and build a wall around Texas? And you think that Buckeye fans have to worry about Sark, getting Quentin Ewers to come back to Texas?
Well, the differences between the environment that Mac Brown had to recruit against versus what Steve Sarkisian is faced with is that for as good as Jim Tressel was at Ohio State, he didn't go regularly into Texas and do the work that Urban Meyer and now Ryan Day are doing, number one. Number two, Texas A&M wasn't nearly the program at that point. It was a good program. It was a top 30 program for most of the 2000s. It was okay between Mac Brown's time there in 1998. Of course, they went to a Sugar Bowl in 98. They had one of their better teams, but that was an aberration. Texas A&M was typically a 7-5 program for the time Mac Brown was there and was nothing special. So he's got to face Jimbo Fisher, does Sarkisian. And So I think he has different challenges than what Mac Brown faced and was able to accomplish. And I think even Lincoln Riley, for as good as Bob Stoops was, that Lincoln Riley, as a guy that has a reputation as a quarterback guru and offensive genius, has that allure to bring those kind of players to Oklahoma out of Texas too. So I think Sarkisian's got his work cut out for him. I think he'll do fine there. I think that the Alabama stint totally set him up for this job because there's nothing that he accomplished at USC or Washington that should point to him getting the red carpet treatment at Texas and being really their only, once they knew that their gold star targets, Urban Meyer in particular, were out of reach, for them to just Sarkisian's it, boom, we're done, is a bit ridiculous to me. Now, he may prove me wrong, and I'm not saying he's going to fail, but I don't get it why he was the end-all be-all, and that was the end of it for Texas. But I think he's in a more difficult environment to build a fence around that state than Mac Brown was.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, what was Sarkisian was 2-2 in bowl games, like a 600 winning percentage between USC, in Washington, and I mean, he went to some Division 2 school or whatever. I think before that, I mean, he built his entire reputation pretty much, 1 year with a generational team, in Alabama. I just want to give you a take. Buckeye Nation is a real worried that he's going to be able to keep putting Ewers at home because I mean, obviously, I think C.J. Stroud is awesome. I definitely saw his Elite 11 performance. I mean, kid, is a good quarterback, but he's not. He's definitely not. Doesn't appear to be like a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields or a Quinn Ewers or a Caleb Williams. I mean, he doesn't seem to be choosing one level. I mean, I hope to God I'm a giant Buckeye fan. So I hope to God he proves me wrong. I would love to see him, be our next first round draft pick, but he doesn't seem to be on that level. I know a lot of people think that having Quinn Ewers for 2 or 3 years, you're going to be right in the hunt of it. But what do you think about the? I'm sure you maybe commented on before, but Harbaugh's picks for defensive coordinator, another kind of Josh Gaddis type guy, never called defenses. I mean, I don't understand what's going on. I mean, I know you talked to those Michigan guys. I mean, what's their take on that? I mean, what's going on with Jim Harbaugh? I mean, it boggles the mind. I mean, the guy was magic in the NFL. I mean, he did have Andrew. He did have a generational quarterback and Young at Stanford, but I mean, still, he was, make good hires. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's it's almost like the guy's taking the job, takes a 50% pay cut. I don't know. I just can't get a read on Michigan. I don't know. And I just wonder what you think about those new hires as far as getting, I know they get NFL pedigree, but guys never call plays, I mean, look what happened to Ohio State this year. Garrett Combs looked like he was out of his league. When he ran into into Sarkisian in the playoff game. I just don't see how having two totally unproven coordinators at Michigan is going to make you better. I just don't see that.
So one more real quick on Sarkisian before I move on that popped into my head near the end of our conversation once you moved on to Harbaugh was that for as much criticism as Clay Helton takes in terms of his job performance at USC, and I'm one of them, look at what he has done at USC and his record and where he's taken USC, meaning Cotton Bowls, Pac-12 championships, etc., Rose Bowl, versus what Sarkisian did there. Also look at Sarkisian's successor at Washington, Chris Peterson, and what he did with the program once Sarkisian left. And not that Sarkisian didn't do some good things to set those guys up to a certain extent, but he didn't do anything outstanding. Again, it's just baffling to me based on his head coaching resume that he would earn a job like Texas. Now, again, you get affiliated with a guy like Nick Saban and you run an offense that is arguably the best in history, then certain good things are going to happen for you. Okay, Harbaugh, I got to think that there's a huge connection between the Harbaugh hire of Mike Macdonald and where he is coaching, which of course is on John Harbaugh's staff at Baltimore. So there's a connection there. So obviously, Jim's brother John really sold him and his ability, and he could be a tremendous coach. But you would think that a particular coach being elevated to the coordinator position and cutting his teeth calling plays for the first time, that would happen at Marshall or UAB or wherever and not happen at Michigan. I agree with you there. That doesn't mean he can't do it. That doesn't mean he's not going to learn on the job. That doesn't mean he's not going to get, and the other, anytime a coach is put in a situation that he's unfamiliar with and has yet to ascend to that level, you would think that they would at least have a staff where there are other coaches on the staff that can help in that realm. Like we've seen that other times where maybe a coach is put in a particular situation that he may be new to, but maybe the head coach, like Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. Okay, he had defensive assistant positions at Purdue and Kent State, but he wasn't the coordinator. He might have been the coordinator at Kent State. I'm not
he was the coordinator at Kent State.
Oh, but still, he moves on to Cincinnati, and he can rely on a head coach who knows defense extremely well. Played it, was the coordinator at Ohio State. So for McDonald to not necessarily have that kind of support on the staff either is a bit alarming.
Yeah, like I said, I just, I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, obviously, I think I'm more like you. Even though it's rumored that you're the only rational Ohio State fan, I consider myself a somewhat rational Ohio State fan, and I know, recognize what Jim Harbaugh, did, in the past. Just it's almost head scratching what these decisions, and it seemed like Michigan, penalized him but gave him one more chance, and you think he'd want to try to hit home runs, and it seems like he just makes is making questionable decisions, and I think you pointed out many times, a strong Michigan makes, I'd love to see another. I was too young to see a 10 years war, but I would love to see another 10-year war. I think that would be, I would hope we would, would come on the winning end of it, not, but I would love to see, Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh go at it on, have another 1 versus 2 again, or, something like that. I remember that game was at, it was like just the energy here was like just unbelievable. I was actually at that game, and it was just insanity. I just I kind of missed that. It just like I know, but yeah, I just want to kind of get your take on that. But then also, have you ever seen a team? Kind of get your opinion on this. At Ohio State that goes to a championship is like it plays the Big Ten completely fumbled the ball on this whole season, not building any bye weeks in, all this, the craziness, they go through, they get kind of like, destroyed by COVID. They lose their best running back, the kid that had 600 yards in the last 2 games, or 584 yards in the last 2 games. And it's like, they definitely got plastered, and I can't even watch that game again. I used to try to watch Ohio State games a couple times, but it's just like, but it just seems like Ohio State is like, it's like, the doom and gloom, like there's all these questions. Can Ryan Day coach? Can Kerry Combs coach? Do you buy into all that, Mark? Are you worried about, as an Ohio State fan, just kind of take off your Mark Rogers hat, and being the fan? Are you worried about Ohio State? Do you think there's any like truth to these things? Like, there's any meat to this? Or do you think they're just going to be, they're going to reload, and it just was just, Trey Sermon got hurt, 2 interior linemen were out. Tommy Togi, I wasn't there. Guy was just a wrecker in the middle. They Cam Brown went out saying they were thin at defensive line. They lost 2 guys to legal issues. They were thin there all year. What's your take on that as far as Ohio State going forward?
Well, I think you have three basic components to any football program. It's more complicated than this, but to make it simple is that you got the talent, you recruit and sign the talent, then you develop them as players. You develop them, you teach them how to use their technique, how to become better route runners, their hand positioning on the field, everything that you do to develop them as players. And then number three, you've got to go coach the game. You got to prepare for the opponent. You've got to coach and instruct and build a game plan. And then during the game, you've got to be able to adjust to the situations on the field that you weren't expecting to win a football game and adjust in the moment. So there's no question that Ohio State's first rate and pretty much matches Alabama in the first category. I did a breakdown of all the recruiting rankings of all the two deep on each side, and Alabama might have had a tiny, minuscule advantage that we don't even know is real because the recruiting rankings are obviously off by some measurement. So they've got the two best rosters in the country. Maybe Georgia's got an argument, but basically the two best rosters in the country. While I was watching that game, and it became obvious that Alabama was going to win the game, it brought to mind the Super Bowl that we saw a few years ago between the Patriots and Rams, Bill Belichick and Sean McVay. That Sean McVay's a tremendous football coach and offensive mind, and he's, 37 years old. Ryan Day is 41 years old. That I believe it was just, this is the first time that Ryan Day went through this. And I'm not talking about a pandemic, everybody had to deal with that, but just how this pandemic might have affected Ohio State differently than other teams that were in that position. And that was the great debate as to whether it affected Ohio State more negatively than the other teams or benefited them more than the other teams. We could debate that throughout history because there are pros and cons to both sides. But that while he did a masterful job preparing them for Clemson, then we never knew, or we could only speculate leading into the game how much that was going to affect them, that climb to the mountaintop and accomplishing what, even though they said all the right things about the championship being the championship, we know that they lost a brutal game to Clemson the year before. And the video that was shown over Justin Fields' shoulder while he was working out that was built into these documentaries and these hype videos of 29-23 against Clemson, those videos and those boards didn't say national championship. They said 29-23 Clemson. So I don't know how much that game took out of them, but I do think we all as fans overreact to one game. So just like Ohio State is not 21 points better than Clemson, Alabama's not 28 points better than Ohio State. They were on that night, but they were on that night. And in both teams, I know as soon as I would run down Ohio State players that were missing from that game, Alabama people would run down the other side. And I know both sides, and I know who was missing, whether it was for just that specific game or for who was lost during the game, Wyatt Davis, Trey Sermon, or Devontae Smith, or who had been lost, as you mentioned, Cam Brown, weeks and weeks and months earlier that would have benefited the team. So anytime you bring up injuries, some people will just say, well, that's just an excuse because you got to play with whomever you've got. Well, that's true. But I think there's a balance. You can't just make that an excuse and say, well, we lost our best offensive lineman, running back, and our arguably best defensive tackle. Therefore, we didn't have our best team there. But on the other hand, it's a discussion point. It's valid. If Ohio State had all their two-deep roster, sprained ankles in the pregame warm-ups and had to play third stringers, well, that would be a discussion point. It's valid to talk about those things. But I think that on certain nights, certain teams show up, not because they tried harder, but it just worked. It just clicked. The matchups worked. Ohio State's dominance along both both sides of the line of scrimmage against Clemson was something that they just grossly took advantage of that worked in their favor, versus that was a stalemate against Alabama. Therefore, Alabama's skill position players just terrorized Ohio State. And it's not an excuse. This is the one weakness that just really played into this Alabama game, was that when have you seen a worse Ohio State secondary? When has Ohio State fielded a worse secondary? I don't know that you can go back to 2012 or 13. I think even those secondaries were performed better than this one. I don't know if you got to go back
to even 18. I mean, it was bad, but not this bad.
Yeah, and they showed at the end of the year that I think that was all scheme issue related generally in 18. And then when they simplified it against Michigan, Northwestern, and Washington, they played so much better that they finally figured it out and let them just go play football. I don't know when they've had worse play in the secondary. And then they were playing the worst team in the country to be that poor in the secondary.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that was a matchup nightmare. With that receiving core of Alabama. But the other thing too is and I mean, I think the other thing too is that I watched really watched the Alabama Notre Dame game, and I mean, Alabama had an easy time in that game. I mean, they did not work up. I mean, no game is easy, but it was, it really kind of reminded me of, and I remember watching that game and going back to last year, because, a lot of people, even the Clemson guys, even Dabo kind of hinted at it a little bit, when that basically the Ohio State game took so much out of Clemson, like two heavyweight fighters, in a poorly made Rocky movie, just, pounding the crap out of each other. And then it's like, you're diminished the next week. You're just not you're just not the same team anymore, because I mean, and obviously LSU, slid into the playoffs. I mean, when was OU was out of that game? 6 minutes in, and Notre Dame was out of that game before it took the field. And it was like it. And I think these battle with Clemson. I love that Clemson game. It was a great game, but I mean, just it just seems like last year Clemson just didn't look like the same team. It's like almost like a heavyweight boxer that got beat up a little too much, one too many times. They didn't have that spark, because it's like Alabama and Ohio State, man, they swapped some paint. I mean, Clemson and Ohio State. I mean, there's bad blood out there. Those guys are really kind of landing on thick, and it's like, I just wonder, because I kind of felt the same way. It looked like, he's obviously, like you said, normally, Fred Venables would get 63 hung on him, and I don't think that LSU was that much better than a Clemson defense, but they were beat up, man, after playing Ohio State. I think it happened to Ohio State this year a little bit. I think they got, obviously, just the field injury, but just, wasted all that motion, like you said, all year. Every hype video had that, that Clemson scoreboard above, in the weight room. So I just wonder if they unloaded the gun and just a little too much against Clemson.
Yeah, and on the drive that Garrett Wilson scored a touchdown to make it 38-24, when it looked like I didn't think that they were going to come back and win, but you get within 2 scores. And there was still a ton of time left. On that particular drive, they actually called 2 design runs for Justin Fields. I think they were the first 2 of the game, and he got loose on one of them. He had a nice gain on one, but the other one he got loose for 35 or 40 yards. Yeah. And I thought, again, it was similar to watching him play against Clemson the year before, and I thought it would have been nice to have seen a fully healthy Justin Fields, because that would have been a component to the offense that they didn't have.
Yeah, him. I mean, obviously it's a no-brainer. The kid's going to be a high first-round pick or middle first-round pick, most likely, like second or third guy coming off the board. So it's like I feel a little nipped as an Ohio State fan. We never got to see a healthy Justin Fields in the most important games. It was always what could he have done if he was, the guy that can, just where is just going to destroy you in RPO, and he's, the guy that basically, ran Trey Sermon down from behind and made a block for him for his first touchdown from the year. I mean, literally, ran a running back down, easily from behind and caught him. Got in front of him, made a block. I mean, it's like if that kid could have played, like you said, last year and this year, it just, amazing what it could have been. I know he was pressed a lot. He was trying to win the Heisman Trophy, the national championship, but he seemed to got that out of him after Indiana. He settled down, and it's like it's just but then he gets hurt again. Yeah, I just wonder what it seems like a lot of times with Ohio State, you wonder what could have been. Obviously, we don't lose to Michigan State in 15. We don't, but it seems like we just have a. I want to call it luck or, just, bad breaks. But, yeah, I definitely agree. But I'll jump off here, Mark. I know you probably got a lot of other callers on here. Thanks for talking to me. And keep up the great work, man. I love what you do. So
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for the call. Call back anytime. Have a good night. And that's one of the reasons why when we match up teams, and maybe this is going to be another video series we'll do, is we'll match up all the teams from the various conferences, and let's say we seed the SEC 1 through 14, we see the Big Ten 1 through 14, then we match up the teams, and it doesn't prove anything because it's all just opinion and discussion. But instead of saying, okay, Alabama's number 1 in the SEC, Ohio State's number 1 in the Big Ten, who would win a game if they played? Well, they just played, and Alabama killed them. So, yeah, Alabama would win that game. I take it to another level and say, if they played 10 times, because there's a ton of teams that you could match up against each other and you'd be like scratching your head for an hour trying to figure out who would win this game between these two teams. Well, it's actually a fairer discussion when you say, well, how would a 10-game series look? And then you can get a better feel for how do we compare these two teams or these two conferences. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McBee Sports. How you doing?
There he is. I'm doing well. What's going on, man?
I'm doing good. I'm going to talk about the Tennessee situation, basically. So I wish I could go to McDonald's every time I go through the drive-thru at McDonald's and either if I Big Mac or fish fillet, usually I go with the fish fillet, have a few $100s in the bag. I mean, they're going to get penalized, I think, for 2-3 years without a bowl game, personally. I mean, they're level A sanctions, basically.
Yeah, I'm not going to pin this down specifically because there's going to be a whole lot more that's going to come out of it than what we know now. But it's sounding like, yeah, a 2 or 3 year bowl ban, scholarship reductions of 15 for 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if some programs never come back. It's not like Tennessee was ever like relevant, I would say. I mean, they had 2 decent years, but they made the right move getting rid of Pruitt. They had to. They had to get rid of that whole coaching staff. Kevin Steele, who just got there, probably keep him. I would say keep him as the interim coach for the 2021 season, or maybe even during this whole period, just keep him as the interim coach because I don't know who they're going to get. I know people are saying Jeff Fisher. All I'm going to say to that is at Tennessee, there's a reason why we celebrate Jeff Fisher Day on on July 9th. Every year because all he is 7-9, which in college football that translates to 5-7, which means you're not going to be in a bowl game. So I do not know why Jeff Fisher would even be considered for this job. I don't even think he has any college football coaching experience, and I'm a Tennessee Titans fan, and I'm used to Jeff Fisher. The guy he gets a lot more credit than what he probably should get. Because he's great with the media. He's good friends with everybody in the media. So I do not. If Jeff Fisher becomes the head coach of Tennessee, there needs to be a serious question about taking him seriously.
Yeah, I just can't imagine with all that Jeff Fisher has accomplished at the next level. you know, it's one thing to take a college job if you're not used to all the things that you need to do as a college coach, which is basically babysit 105 players and make sure that they're going to class and to make sure that their grades are meeting standards so you can keep them active and eligible. And then that you keep them off the street so that they're not causing trouble, you know, chasing women and, you know, drinking too much and, you know, interacting with other substances that they shouldn't be. You got to deal with all that. And if you're not used to doing that as an NFL coach, I just can't imagine at his age that he's going to want to deal with that for the first time, number one. Number two, on top of just the regular college job, he's got to deal with these NCAA issues and scandals and the cleanup of all this. And they're going to be on probation. I just can't imagine that he wants to coach that badly.
He said he wants a job. If they offer it to him, he'll take it. So.
Oh, okay. Maybe he wants to get into it that much. Maybe it's like a Herm. So we've got two cases of this with Herm Edwards and Lovie Smith, guys that had success at the next level that for the first time were like, yeah, I'll take a college head coaching position and deal with young kids. Maybe.
I thought Herm Edwards was always going to work, though. I thought he was going to work because of how the coaching style is. Lovie Smith, in my opinion, was not going to work because I just thought Lovie Smith was just an average coach. And I don't think he's a bad coach. I just think basically he's just there. Basically, I hate to say that, but he's just there. But Jeff Fisher, I mean, I did not see that going well at Tennessee. But, I mean, to be honest, another thing, Mark, I do want to ask you this. You kind of alluded to it. I watched that whole stream when you broke into it with the breaking news. You broke out with the stream for like 2 hours and change.
Yeah.
I watched the whole thing, and you made a point that I do want to talk about. Do you think if Tennessee in 2017 would have just shut up and not blurt out fire Bush Jones after the Florida loss? Because after that Florida loss, that's when things got ugly when they survived UMass and basically lost at the goal line against South Carolina, and because everybody in Knoxville basically knew that it was over since he lost to Florida, and people were saying he was on the hot seat and stuff. Do you think if everybody just kept their mouth shut in Knoxville, do you think that Bush Jones would survive that season and possibly be the coach from 2018 beyond? I'm not saying he would be the coach today, but do you think he would have survived 2017 if everybody just kept their mouth shut?
Well, Butch Jones has the reputation for being a failure at the Tennessee job, but if you really look at what he did, he took over a bad team, a bad program, and he turned around pretty quickly. So he turned them into a respectable team pretty quickly. He recruited top 15 classes, and they had a class that was, I think, number 5 or 6 in the country, and the other classes were all in the top 15. He won 3 consecutive bowl games. Those 2 seasons that I talked about during that live stream were those 2 9-4 seasons, and the one was excruciatingly close to being a great season. You know, they had a lead against Alabama with 3 or 4 minutes left in the game in Tuscaloosa. They lost to Baker Mayfield after leading by 2 touchdowns, and they lost in overtime. You know, they lost excruciating games. They lost that Felipe Franks Hail Mary to Antonio Callaway at the Swamp. So I just find it so tough that a coach that has a team on the precipice of being a true national contender and is that good, 9-4, they killed Northwestern in a bowl game, they killed Nebraska in a bowl game, that some things go wrong, they have one bad season, that coach automatically has to go.
And to add on your point, in 2017, John Kelly was the running back in 2017 for Tennessee.
Yes.
And they would have just handed it all to him against Florida and South Carolina. They would have won those games. there's no doubt in my mind they would be floored by 2 touchdowns, I think, very easily. They would just hand off to John Kelly. So they had better game plan. And they weren't beating Georgia or Alabama that year. And they had LSU, Missouri, and Kentucky. Let's say they lose one of those. But if they, I think if they would have just kept their mouth shut after that Florida game and not saying, oh, Bruce Jones has to go, I think I think they will at least beat South Carolina. I'll say that.
You know, Butch Jones is good enough for Nick Saban to take him on and put him on his staff. So he thinks enough of him to bring him on his staff. And I always, I got to admit, I was always irritated with the way Butch Jones presented himself in interviews and to the media. I always felt like telling him, you know what, just, ease up a little bit and just be a guy. You don't have to sell Tennessee football like 100 miles an hour, 24 hours a day. Just calm down and talk like a real guy. Just like he always seemed like he was trying to sell something and trying to sell how great they are, and everything had a buzzword or a catchphrase to it. But I don't know. I thought he was doing a decent job at Tennessee, and then they had the one bad year, and he's out the door.
Yeah, the team kind of cleared on him after the Bird got out, especially after that UMass game where they barely survived. But he's at Arkansas State. We'll see what he does there. I think he'll do okay.
Well, McD, I'll say one other thing, that it's pretty easy to say right now that both of us could guarantee that if Butch Jones had been retained as the Tennessee football coach, that they would be in much better shape right now than they are.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
They would have won more games, and they wouldn't be in NCAA trouble right now.
Yeah. And for them to pay recruits, basically to go 8-5 in the Gator Bowl and win that Gator Bowl is as pathetic as it gets.
Yes.
At least Ole Miss was winning 10, 11 games.
Yeah.
The Hugh Freeze. And supposedly that's one of the other names as well, Hugh Freeze. But I think I read something about that SEC's not going to allow that. But we'll see.
Yeah, Butch Jones was going 9-4 against tougher schedules and winning bowl games.
And one other quick point I want to make before I let you go is that basically I look at Tennessee's schedule for the upcoming season. Just on the surface, they should be favored in 5 out of 12 games. So we'll see how this affects them. But hopefully, I don't think it's going to go well for Tennessee at all for the next 10 years, personally. But that's basically all I got for you, Mark.
Appreciate it, McD.
Go catch your live stream from a few days ago. But thanks for my call, Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, McD. Always appreciate it. Have a good night. All right, James is in the room. We see that. Ethan. So Ethan's got a super chat here. Much appreciated, of course. Ethan, Olave more surprising, Haskell more needed. Agree. Haskell more needed. That's a difficult comparison. Of course, in football, they play different positions, so it's difficult to compare a wide receiver with a defensive tackle. Now, yes, Haskell's more needed, although Olave's a special receiver for them. Great question. I think that's a very close comparison between the need for Haskell Garrett, who just came out of nowhere to become one of the best defensive tackles in the country and a first-team All-American. Chris Olave is tremendous. Yeah, I got to say I agree that Olave coming back surprises me. Yes. Hey, who's on the line?
Hunter from Alabama.
Hey, Hunter. How are you?
Good. How are you tonight?
I'm good. What's up?
I was listening to the previous caller, and I agree with a lot that was said there. Being sort of an SEC guy, it seems to me that the University of Tennessee doesn't have a very good commitment to their football program. And let me say why. Because when you had Butch Jones, he was recruiting decently. He got a couple guys just last year that he was
there that were 2 5-star recruits that were very heavily, trending in Alabama's direction and in some other programs' direction. He was able to pull those away. And then, after he has a bad season, they just let him go. I just don't know. It doesn't seem like they're ever going to get back to that old Tennessee that they've had, back in the day. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So you're basically saying that Butch Jones should not have been fired?
I think they should give him at least another year.
Yeah, I wouldn't have fired him. I would not have fired him. I said that at the time.
I would have given at least one more year. If he was to win a few more games after that next year, if they would have given him one more year and he wins a few more games, then you give him another year. Just see where it goes. It just seems like every time that they get some sort of progress and then they hit a bump in the road, then they just let their coaches go.
So if I'm Tennessee and I'm hiring Butch Jones, let's see, that would have been in 2014, I believe. He was there 14, 15, 16, 17. And he's basically taking over for teams that won 4 and 5 games. It's my expectation that I almost don't even care what he does the first year in terms of wins and losses. I just want to see dramatic improvement in the competition on the field. But then by the second year, I want to see a significant jump in wins. I want to see him go what he did. He went 7-6 initially and won a bowl game. And then he ripped off those 2 9-4 teams that both won bowl games and finished in the top 15 or 16 in the country. They were in that range. I think one of them were 12th or 13th in the country. And one of them played very close against top level competition, Alabama, Oklahoma. And so at that point, he's proven to me that he can take a 4 or 5 win program and elevate it to 2 9-4 seasons back to back and win bowl games and compete against the very best teams in the country, teams that went to playoff games, that, Alabama and Oklahoma, that, yeah, it wasn't going to be one season that was going to turn my decision into a firing. Like, I would have had to have seen that one more time, another bad season, and then that would have been it for him.
Well, on another note, I thought that when South Carolina get let go of Muschamp, that they might have went after Butch. In my opinion, they made a dumb hire in hiring Shane Premier. I don't see his resume as good as Butch Jones. I would have tried to go after Butch Jones because we know that South Carolina can be a successful program. I mean, we've seen it under what's his name? I lost his name off the top of my head.
Well, Spurrier won 11 games 3 consecutive years.
Yeah. You've seen that under Spurrier, so you've seen them have a semi-successful program. And so, when they fired Muschamp, my first reaction was, I thought they would go after Butch, but it doesn't look like that really happened.
No, I didn't hear his name brought up at all.
And so, but I want teams like that to be successful or to be competitive. Like even though I'm a big Alabama fan, I want Auburn to be competitive. I want Tennessee to be competitive. I want these teams that are in the SEC to be competitive because it makes the overall conference play better. And when these teams are in games against the Ohio States and the Clemsons and the Notre Dames of the world, in the non-conference games, they make them games more exciting. So it makes college football overall more exciting. And so, I'm kind of I'm disappointed in the way that Jeremy handled that program. I thought that he was a lot better a man of character than it seems to be that he is the allegations that are out about him right now. And, he's a very good defensive coordinator for Alabama, and I just hate the way that things have turned out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. All valid comments, for sure.
You're talking about Oleg coming back to Ohio State. I actually think that's a smart move by him. Because if he wants to help that team win a championship, or to be in the run for the championship, I think that was a good thing for him to come back. I was a little surprised by it, but I think it was a good move. What was your take on that?
Well, I didn't look up to see what Chris Olave was being graded at, but I would guess it was roughly in the second round. So he can improve on that. I don't know how much. I think it's great that certainly in the last, whatever it's been, about 10 years, that they've supplied these student athletes with the information so that they can make an informed decision. So I got to think that he's very motivated by winning a championship, because otherwise I think that he would have gotten a decent payday in the NFL and been drafted fairly high based on what I've heard. I haven't looked it up myself to see what the draft grades are, but I understand that it's roughly a second round draft grade.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like them Alabama guys did, last year, decided to come back and finish out the year that they did the way that they did this year. So I think maybe he has that sort of mentality that, he wants to go back and help those guys, get back to the same position they were in this year and have a chance to compete for a championship. So, that's good for Ohio State. I think it's a good thing for Ryan Day and his program.
Yeah, it's certainly a great decision for, them going forward. No question. Best receiver they got. All right, anything else, Hunter?
No, I appreciate you taking my call.
Hey, absolutely.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, I think we will wrap it up right there. We've been on the line for over 2 hours. We only have 62 on the line, so I think that's a good time to shut it down. Cheryl, thank you so much for moderating. And we'll be back. Let's say today is Tuesday, so we'll be back with our Ohio State show actually moving to Thursday. We'll see you the next time live at 6 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow night. So Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time, Florida State Seminoles live. And then we will make a decision on a late night show. And by the beginning of February, I would like to have it set in regards to when we'll be live on a regular basis. So we appreciate it. I will check the live chat here one more time to see if there's anything else here. Absolutely. Alabama football fan roll tide. Cheryl, great job as usual. George, good to see you in here late as well. All right, folks. See you tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern. Check out the videos. We'll continue to crank them out.